You know, Wendy, this is a creek that people either walk over or nearby here every single day. The Tampa City Council is hoping to address the housing crisis by rolling out a few different programs starting this summer. So we know the Citrus County Sheriff's Office is investigating, and after that they hand it off to the state attorney's office, and it's really up to them as to whether or not they'll file those criminal charges. It also came with updates to the intersection where that accident happened. That includes updated lighting and this crosswalk you see right here. Absolutely. I mean, the thing that saved her case are these videos behind us. Her attorney says the fact that she picked up her phone and started recording was key to her case, despite investigators telling her several times she wasn't allowed to. The deputy involved in the shooting will be placed on leave as this investigation continues, and the identities of those involved are not being released at this time. When it comes to money, can you afford a doula? Is your doula accessible when it comes to a sliding scale? It varies so wildly, and because that's such a big part of the solution, that was kind of a sad thing to sit with, is that even though we know that there's a possible fix, not everybody can afford it. Both companies let me know that they have a policy that requires drivers to comply with the law when it comes to service animals. On a Friday afternoon,
oh, victory is mine, victory is mine, victory today.
Lynn Hunt has a song in her heart.
Oh, I told Satan.
And after the last 7 months, her joy is understandable. We first introduced her a few weeks ago.
I'm really not very happy about it, because how would they like to be in my shoes?
When she was still struggling to get someone to flush out the medical port she has in her chest.
It has to be by a skilled nurse, which my doctor wrote that on many letters. Someone who's not skilled cannot do a port. And if you don't flush it every month, it can get clogged, or it can get an infection, which could potentially kill me.
She'd been getting that service from an Advent Health home care nurse for the last 5 years, but then late last year, her services were canceled. We did some digging through her medical records and found that an apparent miscommunication between her provider and her health insurance led to that cancellation. And since our first story aired, Hunt says she's heard from a Humana case manager.
She kept calling me back. Finally, she called me back and said, "We got somebody who will do your port."
And she had her first appointment with that new home health care provider today.
The nurse came out and she did the assessment, all that stuff. And so officially today I'm in.
It's a victory that Hunt says wouldn't have come without speaking up.
No matter what your status in life, you've got to be your own advocate. Don't let people tell you no. And don't be afraid to speak out.
Then I started shouting victory.
After months of searching, local firefighter Shantasia Stevenson says earlier this year she found her dream home in the Wexford Townhomes community.
There was one little step they told me before I could close on the house, was that I had to have an interview with the HOA. Previously, the townhome had a violation due to the garage. The garage had been converted into a room. After that, the seller was made aware of this, so the seller converted the garage back. So they converted the garage back, and then I had the interview.
But she says after that interview, her dream turned into a nightmare.
When I had the interview, I told the HOA president the garage has been converted back and there is no longer a violation. The HOA president said that the flooring in the garage needed to be fixed as well. So we fixed that as well. So there was no longer a violation.
According to HOA bylaws for this community, converting your garage isn't allowed. I spoke to the woman selling the home, who currently lives in South Carolina. She told me she didn't realize she'd violated the bylaws and quickly converted her garage from this back to this and updated everyone involved.
Even though there was no more violations, the HOA president ordered a new estoppel letter stating that the garage had been converted, even though it had already been converted back.
Both Stevenson and the seller provided copies of those estoppel letters to ABC Action News. The first one is dated February 13th, which is before Stevenson says she had her interview, and it shows there were no open violations. But the second letter, dated March 19th, weeks after Stevenson's March 2nd interview, has garage conversion listed as an open violation. And Stevenson also provided screenshots of a text exchange from Wednesday, March 13th. In it, she says the HOA president told her she was approved to be a member of the community, and that it was the seller's job to make sure the home complied with the bylaws before putting it up for sale. The HOA president also says he's available on Tuesdays for an inspection, but added that a scheduling issue with the realtor led to the first inspection being rescheduled. Stevenson also provided email exchanges from between March 27th and April 2nd that include the HOA president, her realtor's office, and the community association. The group goes back and forth about missed inspection dates and miscommunication about rescheduling. At one point, Stevenson's realtor calls the back and forth nonsense and says she will share her concerns about the process with the city. The HOA president responds by accusing that realtor of threatening to defame the board. And moving forward, he advises them to communicate with the HOA's legal counsel.
The title company said that I had to have a letter of approval from the HOA to close on the home.
But more than a month after discussion started, and despite emailed demands from the seller's attorney for an inspection, Stevenson says it still hasn't happened, leaving her homeless because she broke her lease, thinking she would have closed on the house by now.
From that point forward, I was left in limbo and without a home and a place to stay.
And that's when we got involved. I spoke to a local attorney who specializes in HOA law, and he says an open HOA violation shouldn't hold up the sale of a home.
The buyer of the real estate could assume that obligation and close the transaction, but it's not for the homeowners association to interfere and block the sale.
And he adds that the HOA could be liable if this sale falls apart.
The seller may have a cause of action against the homeowners association for tortiously interfering with that contract. And the damages in this day and age could be pretty significant. So I think that is an anomaly, but it does happen with fair enough regularity where people certainly need to have remedies by going to court, and they need to be educated about their rights.
And it appears this situation has in fact impacted the sale. After our interview, Stevenson contacted me to tell me she's now looking elsewhere to buy a home because of the stress this situation has caused her. In the meantime, I have called and texted that HOA president several times, but I haven't had any luck in getting a response on this situation. I've also called and emailed several people with Professional Bayway Management, or PBM. They're the community association that works with the HOA to help manage the Wexford townhomes. Initially, somebody responded and told me they were going to pass my request for comment along to somebody from the HOA board, but then I never heard back. When I followed up, my request went unanswered. Under the now familiar hum of a generator, we find a sight for sore eyes in the Paul family home.
We've been praying for this day, and I just hope that everything goes good and we keep moving forward.
Workers are replacing fuse boxes and installing new wiring that will give them power back more than 4 months after Hurricane Ian damaged their Tampa home.
Every single day, I call FEMA for an update.
We first introduced you to the Paul family in January after they told us they'd struggled to get FEMA to acknowledge that their damage was storm-related. And after reviewing a fire report from that day, which listed the damage as an act of nature, we contacted FEMA too.
I believe it was the next day FEMA reached out and they set up a in-person inspection.
2 weeks after FEMA re-inspected their home, they sent the Paul family a letter approving them for disaster relief funds. The $2,600 that they allocated for repairs wasn't enough to fully cover everything, but Melissa Paul says the repair company they're using is willing to work with them. And as she counts down the days until Thursday when they should finally have power back,
I'm probably gonna cry. I probably am gonna cry.
she says she's just remaining thankful.
Here we are. Yay, 1 month later. Thank you so much for coming out here and helping us with our story.
In Tampa, Rochelle Alleyne, ABC Action News.